The stagecoach hit another rut, and Alara's head smacked against the wooden frame hard enough to make her teeth click together. She pressed her palm to the window, watching the Wyoming landscape roll past. Endless brown grass, mountains that looked like broken teeth against a gray sky, and not a single tree worth mentioning. First time out west? The woman across from her had been trying to make conversation for the last hour. She wore a traveling suit that probably cost more than Alara's entire wardrobe, and her gloves didn't have a single patch. Yes, ma'am. Alara pulled her shawl tighter. April in Wyoming felt like February back in Philadelphia. I'm here for work. Oh? What kind of work? Sewing, alterations mostly. I got a letter from a Mrs. Hadley at the Vance Ranch, said they needed someone for the season. The woman's eyebrows rose. The Vance Ranch? My dear, you do know. Whatever she was about to say got swallowed by the driver's shout. Vance property line. 30 minutes to the main house. Alara leaned forward. Through the dust, she could see fence posts stretching toward the horizon, then buildings, barns, stables, workers' cottages arranged like a small town. The main house appeared last, a sprawling structure of stone and timber that looked more like a hotel than a home. Lord have mercy, Alara whispered. The woman across from her smiled. The Vances own more land than some eastern states. Mr. Colt Vance inherited it all when his father passed 3 years ago. He's quite the catch, if you believe the newspapers. Alara didn't read society pages. She read measurement notations and fabric invoices, but even she'd heard whispers about Colt Vance, the rancher who'd turned his inheritance into an empire, who ran cattle operations that supplied half the territories, who supposedly had business interests from Denver to San Francisco. The kind of man who didn't notice people like her. The coach lurched to a stop. A footman in actual livery opened the door and offered his hand. Alara climbed down with her single carpet bag, trying not to stare at everything at once. Carriages lined the drive. Women in silk dresses glided past with parasols. Men in suits stood in clusters, smoking cigars that probably cost more than her weekly wages. Music drifted from somewhere inside the house, a string quartet, unless she missed her guess. Miss? The footman was watching her. Are you expected? Yes, Mrs. Hadley. I'm the seamstress she hired. His expression shifted from polite to confused. Mrs. Hadley's been gone 2 weeks. Family emergency back east. Didn't she write to you? Alara's stomach dropped. No letter. Well, he glanced toward the house. Today's not ideal. There's an event, but I suppose you could wait in the kitchen until… Thomas! A woman's voice cut through the noise. She swept down the steps and addressed the color of champagne, diamonds glittering at her throat. Don't leave guests standing in the drive. Honestly. Mrs. Hartford, this young lady isn't a guest. She's… Nonsense. Anyone arriving today is a guest. The woman smiled at Alara. Come along, dear. Let's get you sorted. Ma'am, I think there's been a mistake. But Mrs. Hartford already had Alara's arm, steering her through the massive front doors with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her life. The entrance hall was chaos dressed up as elegance. Servants moved through the crowd carrying trays. Flowers erupted from vases the size of water barrels. And everywhere, people in clothes that cost more than Alara's family made in a year. Margaret! Another woman appeared, this one in forest green. There you are. The senator's wife is asking about seating arrangements, and I cannot find that useless event coordinator anywhere. Eleanor, breathe. Everything's under control. Mrs. Hartford patted Alara's arm. This is… I'm sorry, dear. Your name? Alara Quinn, ma'am. Miss Quinn, this is Mrs. Eleanor Pritchard. Eleanor, Miss Quinn just arrived. Be a darling and show her where to freshen up while I handle the senator's wife. Mrs. Pritchard looked Alara up and down. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course. Right this way? She led Alara through hallways lined with oil paintings and mounted animal heads. They passed a parlor where women sat fanning themselves, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and what looked like a music room before finally stopping at a door. You can wait here until… Eleanor! A man's voice boomed from downstairs. We're starting! Mrs. Pritchard's face lit up. Oh, it's time. Come on, you don't want to miss this. Miss what? Ma'am, I really should… But the woman was already hurrying back toward the noise, and Alara found herself swept along in a current of silk and perfume and anticipation. They emerged onto a balcony overlooking what had to be a ballroom. Below, a crowd had gathered in a semicircle. At the center stood a man. Alara couldn't see his face from where she stood, but she could see the way people watched him, like he was magnetic north, and they were all just compasses trying to find their way. He wore a dark suit tailored so well it probably had its own insurance policy. His shoulders were broad enough to carry weight, and from the way he held himself, he'd been doing exactly that for a long time. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice carried without shouting, "thank you for coming on such short notice. I know many of you traveled considerable distances, and I appreciate your presence." Someone near Alara whispered, "He's really going to do it." "About time," another voice answered. "The speculation was getting ridiculous." "Do what?" Alara wanted to ask, but everyone had gone quiet. The man, Colt Vance it had to be, turned slightly. "As many of you know, there's been significant pressure regarding my personal life. Questions about succession, about the future of Vance Holdings, about partnerships both business and—" He paused. "Otherwise." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. "I've given this considerable thought, and I've made a decision." He extended his hand toward someone Alara couldn't see. "Miss Josephine Cartwright has done me the great honor of agreeing to become my wife." The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, the rustle of 100 whispered conversations starting at once. A woman stepped into view, blonde, beautiful, wearing a dress that probably required 3 people to put on. She took Colt's hand with a smile that belonged on magazine covers. Alara felt something twist in her chest. Not jealousy, she had no claim to jealousy, but something like disappointment, though she couldn't have explained why. This wasn't her world. These weren't her people. She was a seamstress from Philadelphia who'd gotten on the wrong stagecoach at the wrong time. She needed to leave, now, before someone realized she wasn't supposed to be here. Alara turned to slip back through the crowd, but her carpet bag caught on something. A woman's dress, a piece of furniture, she didn't see what. She stumbled forward, hit the balcony railing, and her bag went flying. It tumbled end over end through the air, spilling its contents as it fell. Thread spools, fabric scraps, her good scissors, the photograph of her parents, all of it raining down on the crowd below like the world's most pathetic confetti. The bag itself hit a champagne tower. Glass exploded. Champagne sprayed, women screamed, men jumped back. And in the center of it all, Colt Vance stood dripping with expensive French wine, staring up at the balcony, staring directly at Alara. For a moment, nobody moved. The string quartet had stopped playing. The only sound was champagne dripping onto marble. Then Colt's voice, very quiet. "Who are you?" Every eye in the room turned upward. Alara felt her face go hot enough to start fires. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean there was a misunderstanding, and I shouldn't be here, and I'll just come down here." It wasn't a request. Alara's legs felt like water, but she moved, down the stairs through a crowd that parted like she carried plague. Her boots, her muddy, worn, practical boots, tracked dirt across floors that probably got polished daily. She stopped 10 feet from Colt Vance. Up close, he was younger than she'd expected. Maybe 30, with dark hair and eyes the color of winter sky. His jaw looked like it had been carved by someone angry at the stone. Handsome, objectively, but in a way that made you think of mountains. Impressive, immovable, and dangerous if you weren't careful. "I'm sorry," Alara said again. "I was hired as a seamstress. Mrs. Hadley sent for me, but she's gone, and there was confusion at the door, and someone thought I was a guest, and I tried to explain, but—" She was babbling. She clamped her mouth shut. Colt stared at her. Champagne dripped from his hair onto his collar. Josephine Cartwright appeared at his elbow. "Colt, darling, perhaps we should—" "You're the seamstress." He said it like he was working through a puzzle. "Yes, sir, Alara Quinn, from Philadelphia. I can pay for the damages, though it might take some time, and I'll leave right now if you just—" "No." Alara blinked. "No?" Colt looked at the crowd, at Josephine, who'd gone very still, at the champagne dripping down his suit, then back at Alara. Something changed in his expression. It happened fast. A decision being made, a door opening or closing, she couldn't tell which. But when he spoke again, his voice carried to every corner of the room. Ladies and gentlemen,
This
I
story was
apologize for
posted on the
confusion.
channel The Rusty
There's been a
Saddle.
change of
Please do not
plans.
repost it in any
Josephine's hand
form.
tightened on his arm. Colt, what are you... He pulled away from her gently but firmly, took 2 steps toward Alara, and before she could process what was happening, he took her hand. This, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, is my wife. The room went silent. Alara's brain stuttered. I'm your what? But Colt was still talking, still holding her hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. We married quietly last month. I wanted to announce it properly, but circumstances have forced my hand. Alara and I have been corresponding for some time, and when we finally met in person, he looked down at her, and his eyes held a warning that was somehow also a plea. Well, some things can't wait for propriety. Someone dropped a glass. It shattered, and the sound seemed to break whatever spell had held the room frozen. Then everyone started talking at once. Josephine's face had gone white. You're married? You proposed to me 3 days ago. A mistake, Colt said. One I deeply regret. I thought I could do my duty, make the smart business choice, but I can't marry you when I'm already married to her. This is insane. A man pushed through the crowd, older, with Josephine's eyes. Cartwright, is it? You can't possibly expect anyone to believe. Are you calling me a liar, sir? Colt's voice went cold. The man stopped. Nobody called Colt Vance a liar, not if they wanted to keep doing business in Wyoming. Alara tried to pull her hand free. Mr. Vance, I don't know what... He squeezed her fingers, hard. The message was clear. Play along. But she didn't understand. She didn't know the rules. She was drowning in front of 200 people, and the only thing keeping her upright was a stranger's hand and a lie so big it should have collapsed under its own weight. I need to speak with my wife, Colt said. Privately. I trust you'll all excuse us. He didn't wait for an answer, just pulled Alara toward a side door, past staring faces and open mouths, into a hallway that was blessedly empty. The moment the door closed, she yanked her hand free. What the hell was that? A mistake. He ran a hand through his wet hair. Or a solution. I haven't decided yet. I am not your wife. I know that, obviously. He paced to the window, back again. But they don't. And that's going to buy me some time. Time for what? To do what? Alara's heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest. You just humiliated that woman in front of everyone she knows. Josephine will survive. Her father's been trying to force a merger through marriage for 6 months. She doesn't love me any more than I love her. That doesn't make it right. Right. Colt laughed, but there was no humor in it. Nothing about this is right, but it's necessary. For you, maybe. I just lost my job before I even started it. I'm stranded in Wyoming with no money and no way home, and you just told 200 people I'm something I'm not. Her voice was rising. She couldn't stop it. Do you have any idea what you've done? He looked at her then. Really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time. No, he said quietly, but I'm about to find out. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Colt moved fast, catching her arm and pulling her into a side room, a study by the look of it, all dark wood and leather chairs. Stay here, he said. Don't talk to anyone. I'll handle this. Handle what? You can't just... But he was already gone. Alara stood in the center of the study, shaking. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. She was a seamstress. She fixed hems and took in waists and sometimes, if she was lucky, made a dress from scratch. She didn't crash engagement parties or get claimed as wives by ranchers who owned half of Wyoming. She needed to run. Take her ruined carpet bag and walk until she found a town. Any town, with a telegraph office. Wire her brother for money. Go home. Forget this ever happened. The door opened. Colt stood there, jacket gone, shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked tired. We need to talk. I don't want to talk. I want to leave. I know. But if you walk out that door right now, you'll be lucky to make it to the road before someone from the Cartwright camp catches up with you. Alara's blood went cold. What does that mean? It means Josephine's father has a lot of money and very little patience. It means you just became the reason his daughter got publicly humiliated. It means, he sighed, It means you're in danger, Miss Quinn, and so am I. If you disappear and make me look like a liar, you are a liar. Yes, but a useful one. He sat in one of the leather chairs, gestured for her to take the other. Sit, please. She didn't want to, but her legs were shaking, and the chair was there, and she was so tired. She sat. Colt leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I'm going to be honest with you. That's more than most people in this house have gotten from me in years. How reassuring. He almost smiled. Josephine Cartwright's father owns 3 banks and half the railroad development rights in this territory. He's been pressuring me to marry his daughter for months. I kept refusing. Then last week, he made it clear, marry Josephine, or he'll call in loans I can't pay and destroy everything my father built. So you said yes. So I said yes, and I hated myself for it. He rubbed his face. Then you fell through my ceiling like some kind of deranged angel, and I saw a way out. I didn't fall, my bag fell. Semantics. Point is, you're here. And for reasons I can't fully explain, I told 200 people you're my wife. That doesn't make it true. No, but it could. Alara stared at him. You're insane. Probably, but I'm also desperate. He stood, paced to the window. Outside, she could see guests milling around, confusion and scandal, thick as smoke. Here's what I'm proposing. You stay. Play the role. Let people believe we're married. In return, I'll pay off whatever debts brought you out west, set you up with enough money to start fresh anywhere you want, and in 1 year, maybe less, we quietly divorce and go our separate ways. You want me to lie. I want us both to survive. There's a difference. Alara's head spun. This is crazy. You don't know me. I don't know you. We can't just... People will ask questions. They'll want proof. We'll make proof. Marriage certificate, witnesses, whatever we need. I have resources. That's fraud. It's strategy. He turned to face her. Look, Miss Quinn, Alara, I understand this isn't what you signed up for, but the truth is you're already involved. The moment I said your name, you became part of this story. You can walk away and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, or you can stay and let me protect you while we figure this out. Protect me from what? From lies you told? From the consequences of those lies, which, unfortunately, we now share. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to wake up in Philadelphia and discover this was all a nightmare brought on by bad fish. I came here for a job, a simple, normal job. I know, and I'm sorry. He sounded like he meant it. But simple and normal left the building the moment your bag hit that champagne tower. Now we're here. And I'm asking, will you help me? Why should I? Because you need money, and I need time. Because we're both trapped, just in different ways. He paused. And because if you say no, I don't know what happens next. But I don't think either of us will like it. Alara closed her eyes, thought about her brother's letters, the ones that came less frequently now because stamps cost money. Thought about her mother's grave and how she'd promised to take care of the family. Thought about Philadelphia winters in a room with no heat, mending clothes by candlelight because they couldn't afford oil. Thought about the fear in Colt Vance's eyes, buried under confidence, but there all the same. 1 year, she heard herself say. 1 year. And you pay off my family's debts. All of them. Done. And I want it in writing, a real contract, not just your word. Fair enough. He held out his hand. Do we have a deal? Alara looked at his hand, looked at the door, looked at the life she'd known disappearing like smoke. She shook his hand. We have a deal. His grip was warm, solid. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I don't know how to be a rancher's wife. Good. I don't know how to be a husband. We'll figure it out together. The door burst open. Mrs. Hartford stood there, face flushed. Colt, the Cartwrights are demanding answers. The senator's threatening to leave. And someone needs to explain to 200 guests why... She stopped, seeing Alara. Oh, you're still here. Margaret, meet my wife. Colt's voice was steady. Alara, this is Margaret Hartford. She runs half my social obligations and most of my life. Mrs. Hartford's mouth opened, closed. Your wife. That's what I said. Colt Vance, you have exactly 30 seconds to explain what's happening before I... It's real, Margaret. We married last month, quietly. I was going to tell you,
This
but
story
things
was
got
posted on the
complicated.
channel The Rusty Saddle.
Complicated.
Please do not
She looked at
repost it in
Alara's
any
muddy
form.
boots, her plain dress. The carpetbag contents scattered across the ballroom. That's one word for it. I know it's irregular. Irregular? Colt, you proposed to Josephine Cartwright 3 days ago. A mistake. One I'm correcting. By producing a secret wife, Mrs. Hartford pressed her fingers to her temples. This is going to be a scandal. The newspapers will... Let them talk. Colt moved to stand beside Alara. This is my choice, my wife, and anyone who has a problem with it can take it up with me directly. Mrs. Hartford studied them both. Alara tried not to squirm under the scrutiny. Finally, the woman sighed. Fine, but we're doing this properly. If she's going to be Colt Vance's wife, she needs to look the part. Come with me, dear. Where are we going? Alara asked. To make you presentable, unless you plan to meet the governor in a dress that's been packed in a bag for 3 days. The governor? He's downstairs, along with a senator, 2 judges, and half the territory's business elite. They all came for an engagement party. Now they're getting a reception for a wife nobody knew existed. Mrs. Hartford grabbed Alara's hand. We have work to do. She pulled Alara out of the study, down another hallway, up a flight of stairs. They passed servants who stared, guests who whispered, and at least one woman who looked like she might faint. Finally, Mrs. Hartford pushed open a door. This is the mistress suite. It was Colt's mother's room. The space was beautiful, all soft colors and natural light, with windows overlooking the mountains. A 4-poster bed dominated one wall. A wardrobe stood open, revealing dresses that made Alara's chest tight. Those are mine, Mrs. Hartford said. From when I stayed here last summer, we're about the same size. Pick something. I can't wear your clothes. You can, and you will, unless you want to go back down there in... She gestured at Alara's travel-stained dress. That, Alara wanted to argue, but Mrs. Hartford was already pulling out dresses, laying them across the bed with the efficiency of someone who'd dressed people for decades. This one, she said finally, holding up a gown in deep blue. It'll bring out your eyes, and it's conservative enough that nobody can accuse you of being improper. Mrs. Hartford, call me Margaret, and before you say anything else, let me be clear. She set the dress down, fixed Alara with a look that could cut glass. I don't know what you are to Colt. I don't know if this marriage is real or some scheme I'm too old to understand, but I've known that boy since he was 15 years old, and I've never seen him look scared until today. He doesn't seem scared. That's because he's good at hiding it, but I know what fear looks like on a Vance face. She softened slightly. Whatever's happening here, he needs help, and apparently that's you, so I'm going to help you help him. Understand? Alara nodded slowly. Good. Now take off that dress, and let's make you look like you belong here. 20 minutes later, Alara stared at herself in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman looking back. The blue dress fit perfectly, cinched at the waist and flowing to the floor. Margaret had done something with her hair, pinned it up, tucked flowers in it somehow. A borrowed necklace glittered at her throat. You look like a lady, Margaret said. I look like I'm playing dress-up. Same thing, if you do it right. Margaret adjusted a pin. Now listen carefully. When we go downstairs, you smile. You hold your head high. You take Colt's arm like you've done it 1,000 times. And if anyone asks questions, you keep your answers short and vague. I'm not good at lying. Then don't lie. Just don't volunteer information. There's a difference. Margaret handed her a pair of gloves. Put these on. Ladies wear gloves. Alara's hand shook as she pulled them on. I don't think I can do this. You don't have a choice. Not anymore. Margaret's voice was firm but not unkind. The moment Colt said your name, you stopped being Alara Quinn from Philadelphia. You became Alara Vance. And that woman doesn't get to be scared where people can see. But I am scared. I know. So fake it until it's true. Margaret moved toward the door. Ready? No. Perfect. Let's go. The walk back downstairs felt like a march to execution. Alara focused on breathing, on not tripping, on keeping her chin up the way Margaret had shown her. They emerged into the ballroom. The crowd had thinned, but enough people remained that Alara felt every eye turned toward her. Colt stood near the center of the room. He'd changed into a dry suit, and he looked every inch the powerful rancher everyone said he was. When he saw Alara, something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or relief. He crossed to her in 3 strides. "You look beautiful." "I look terrified." "I know, me too." He offered his arm. "Ready?" "Not even slightly." "Good enough." He led her into the room, and the crowd seemed to hold its breath. An older man approached, silver hair, expensive suit, the bearing of someone used to being important. "Colt, I think you owe us all an explanation." "Governor Marsh," Colt's voice stayed level. "Allow me to introduce my wife, Alara." The governor's eyes swept over her. "Mrs. Vance, this is quite the surprise." "For everyone, it seems." Alara was amazed her voice worked. "Including me, in some ways." A few people laughed. The tension broke slightly. "How did you two meet?" a woman called out. Alara's mind went blank. Colt squeezed her hand. "Letters," he said smoothly. "Alara was corresponding with my mother before she passed. We began writing, and—" He looked down at her, and his expression was soft enough to seem real. "Some connections can't be explained, only felt." More murmurs. Alara wanted to disappear into the floor. "And you married in secret?" The governor again. "Why?" "Privacy." Colt's voice hardened slightly. "My personal life has been speculated about, dissected, and discussed in every newspaper from here to San Francisco. I wanted something that was just mine, ours. Is that so hard to understand?" Silence. Then the governor smiled. "Actually, no. I can understand that perfectly." The mood shifted. Other people approached with questions that Colt fielded easily, making up a history for them on the spot. Alara smiled and nodded and tried not to shake. After what felt like hours, Colt excused them. "My wife has had a long journey, if you'll excuse us." He led her to a quieter corner of the house, into a small parlor away from the noise. The moment the door closed, Alara slumped against the wall. "I'm going to be sick." "You're not. You were perfect." "I was a disaster." "You were convincing. That's all that matters." Colt poured something from a decanter, handed her a glass. "Drink this." She sniffed it. "What is it?" "Whiskey." "Good whiskey." Alara had never had whiskey in her life, but she drank it anyway, and the burn helped settle her stomach. "How long do we have to keep doing this?" she asked. "Tonight? Another hour, maybe 2. Then we can claim exhaustion and retreat." He poured himself a glass. "After that, every day, for as long as it takes. A year? Or less if we're lucky." Alara looked at the glass in her hand, at the dress she was wearing, at the man who'd just turned her life inside out with a single sentence. "I don't even know you," she said quietly. "No, but you will." Colt raised his glass. "To partnerships built on desperate choices." Alara clinked her glass against his. "To surviving them." They drank. And outside the door, the party continued. 200 witnesses to a lie that had just become their life. The guest bedroom felt like a museum. Everything was too clean, too expensive, too far removed from anything Alara had ever called home. She sat on the edge of a bed that could have fit her entire Philadelphia apartment and stared at her hands. They were still shaking. A knock at the door made her jump. "It's Margaret." "Come in." Margaret entered carrying what looked like half a wardrobe. "We need to get you properly situated, starting with clothes that actually belong to you." "I can't afford—" "Colt's paying. Don't argue." Margaret started hanging dresses in the wardrobe. "Besides, you're a Vance now, at least on paper. That means maintaining appearances." Alara watched her work. "Why are you helping me?" Margaret paused. "Because Colt asked me to. And because despite what you might think, I don't enjoy watching people drown." She turned to face Alara. "That said, I need to know, are you planning to run?" "I don't know." "Honest answer. I appreciate that." Margaret sat in the chair by the window. "Let me tell you something about Colt Vance. His father was a hard man, Built this ranch from nothing and made sure everyone knew it. When he died, he left Colt with an empire and enough debt to bury 3 normal men. I didn't know that. Nobody does. Colt's been working himself into the ground.
This story
for 3
was
years to
posted
keep
on the
this place
channel The
running.
Rusty Saddle.
The Cartwright
Please
marriage
do
would
not
have solved his
repost it in
financial
any form.
problems, but it would have cost him everything else. Margaret's expression softened. I'm not saying what he did was right, but I understand why he did it. That doesn't make me less trapped. No, it just means you're both trapped together. Margaret stood. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be harder. She left before Alara could ask what that meant. Sleep didn't come. Alara lay in the too-soft bed, staring at shadows on the ceiling, trying to process everything that had happened. 12 hours ago, she'd been a seamstress on a stagecoach. Now she was supposedly married to a man she'd never met, wearing borrowed clothes, living a lie that could destroy them both. She thought about running, slipping out a window, walking until she found a town, wiring her brother. But Colt's warning echoed in her head. The Cartwrights wouldn't let her disappear quietly. And even if they did, what then? She'd still be broke, still be desperate, still be exactly where she started. At least here, she had options. Terrible options, but options. Morning came too soon. A maid knocked at dawn with breakfast and a note in Colt's handwriting. Meet me in the study at 8. We need to talk. Alara dressed in one of the simpler dresses Margaret had left, gray wool, practical, and made her way downstairs. The house felt different in daylight, quieter. The servants she passed nodded respectfully, but their eyes held questions. Colt was waiting in the study, surrounded by papers. He looked like he hadn't slept either. Coffee? He gestured to a pot on the desk. Please. He poured her a cup. Their fingers brushed as she took it, and they both pulled back too quickly. So, Alara said. Now what? Now we make this convincing. Colt pushed a folder across the desk. Marriage certificate. Backdated to 6 weeks ago. I have a judge who owes me a favor. Alara opened it. Her name, Alara Quinn Vance, stared back at her in official script. It looked real. It looked binding. This is fraud. This is survival. Colt leaned back in his chair. The Cartwrights are already asking questions. Josephine's father sent word this morning. He wants proof, documentation, witnesses. We don't have witnesses. We will. Margaret's already spreading the story. 2 ranch hands will swear they saw us together last month. The minister who supposedly married us is very understanding about confidential ceremonies. He rubbed his face. It's all arranged. You've done this before. What? Lied this efficiently. Colt's jaw tightened. I do what needs to be done. Same as you. That hit harder than it should have, because he was right. She'd agreed to this. Made her own bargain with the truth. What else? She asked. You'll need to learn the house, the staff, my schedule. People will expect you to know things a real wife would know. He stood, moved to the window. And we'll need to be seen together, a lot, in public. Doing what? Whatever married couples do. Dinners, social calls, church on Sundays. Alara's stomach twisted. I don't know how to do any of that. Neither do I, but we'll figure it out. He turned to face her. Starting today, there's a luncheon at the Pritchard Ranch. Everyone who's anyone will be there, including the Cartwrights. You want me to face them? Already? I want them to see we're united, that this isn't some hastily constructed lie. His expression was unreadable. Unless you'd rather hide up here. The challenge in his voice sparked something in her chest. I'm not hiding. Good, the carriage leaves in an hour. The ride to the Pritchard Ranch was silent. Colt spent it reading documents. Alara spent it trying not to panic. Margaret had insisted she wear the blue dress again. They need to see you as the same woman from last night. And had done something elaborate with her hair that required 20 pins and felt like it might collapse at any moment. Stop touching it, Colt said without looking up from his papers. I'm not. You've adjusted your hair 4 times since we left. Alara dropped her hand. How do you know? You haven't looked at me once. I notice things. He finally met her eyes. You're nervous? Of course I'm nervous. I'm about to have lunch with people who think I'm a liar and a social climber. They think you're my wife. There's a difference. Is there? Colt set down his papers. Listen to me. These people, the Pritchards, the Cartwrights, all of them, they trade in appearances and assumptions. They don't care about truth. They care about what things look like. So, we're going to walk in there, and we're going to look like the happiest newlyweds Wyoming has ever seen. Understood? I don't know how to do that. Then follow my lead. He reached across the seat, took her hand. His palm was warm, calloused. And try to remember, I'm not the enemy here. The Pritchard ranch was smaller than Colt's, but still impressive. Carriages lined the drive. Women in summer dresses clustered under parasols. Men stood smoking, talking business. Colt helped Alara down from the carriage. His hand stayed on her lower back as they approached the house, proprietary, protective. Playing the part. Eleanor Pritchard met them at the door. Colt and Mrs. Vance, how lovely to see you both. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Eleanor, thank you for having us. Colt's voice was easy, casual. I know yesterday was rather dramatic. Dramatic is one word for it. Eleanor's gaze fixed on Alara. My dear, you must be exhausted from all the excitement. It's been an adjustment, Alara said carefully. I imagine so. Going from a seamstress to a rancher's wife overnight, quite the change of circumstances. The words landed like a slap. Colt's hand tightened on Alara's back. My wife's profession has nothing to do with her value, he said quietly, but I'm sure you didn't mean to imply otherwise. Eleanor's smile froze. Of course not. Please, come in. Everyone's eager to meet the new Mrs. Vance. The parlor was packed. Alara recognized some faces from the night before. Others were new, but they all wore the same expression, curiosity mixed with judgment. Josephine Cartwright stood near the far window. She'd been beautiful yesterday. Today she looked carved from ice. Colt, her voice cut through the chatter. How brave of you to come. Josephine, Colt inclined his head. You look well. Do I? I spent most of last night explaining to my father why his business arrangement fell through because you apparently married a stranger. Her eyes slid to Alara. Though I suppose stranger is the operative word. Josephine, Eleanor started. No, it's fine. I'm curious. Josephine moved closer. Tell me, Mrs. Vance, how exactly did you and Colt meet? The story seems to change, depending on who's telling it. Alara's mouth went dry. She could feel every eye in the room on her. We wrote letters, she said, after his mother passed. I'd been corresponding with her about embroidery patterns, and Colt found the letters. He wrote back. How romantic and convenient. Josephine's smile was razor sharp. Strange that he never mentioned you, not once, not even when he was proposing to me. That was a mistake, Colt said. One I've apologized for. A mistake. Yes, you've said that. Josephine turned back to Alara. Tell me something only a real wife would know. What's Colt's favorite time of day? Alara's brain scrambled. She had no idea. She knew nothing about this man except that he was desperate enough to lie to 200 people. Dawn, she said, guessing wildly. He likes watching the sun come up. Josephine's expression flickered. Lucky guess. Not a guess, Colt said smoothly. I told her that the morning after we married. We watched the sunrise together from the east pasture. He looked at Alara and his expression was soft enough to seem real. It's when I knew I'd made the right choice. The room went quiet. Some of the women looked touched. Others looked skeptical. Then an older woman Alara didn't recognize spoke up. Well, I think it's lovely. A real romance, not some arranged business deal. We need more of that in this territory. Agreed, another voice chimed in. Too much calculation, not enough heart. The tension broke slightly. Josephine's father, the man who'd challenged Colt yesterday, appeared at her elbow. Mr. Cartwright, Colt extended his hand. I owe you an apology. Cartwright ignored the hand. You owe me considerably more than that. But I'm not here to make a scene. He looked at Alara. I am curious, though. What does a seamstress bring to a marriage with Colt Vance? Besides an empty bank account. Thomas! Eleanor gasped. But Alara felt something shift inside her. She'd spent her whole life being dismissed by people like this, people who measured worth in dollars and bloodlines. She was tired of it. Honesty, she said quietly. I bring honesty. And the ability to see people for what they are.
This
not what
story
they
was
own.
posted on the channel The
She
Rusty
met
Saddle.
Cartwright's eye.
Please do not repost it in
Can
any
your daughter
form.
say the same? The room went dead silent. Then Colt laughed. Actually laughed. Warm and genuine. That's my wife. Cartwright's face went red. You'll regret this, Vance. Both of you. I've regretted plenty of things in my life, Colt said, but marrying Alara won't be one of them. He guided her away before Cartwright could respond, out onto a terrace where the air was cooler and the crowd was thinner. That was either very brave or very stupid, Colt said. Probably both. Alara's hands were shaking again. I just made things worse, didn't I? You stood up to one of the richest men in Wyoming. I'd say you made things interesting. He leaned against the railing. Where did that come from? I don't know. I'm tired of people looking at me like I'm nothing. You're not nothing. Says the man who claimed me as his wife to escape a bad business deal. Colt winced. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? He was quiet for a moment. I don't know. It happened fast. I saw you standing there looking terrified and out of place, and I just reacted. I told myself I was being strategic, but maybe I just saw someone who needed help as much as I did. It was the most honest thing he'd said to her. We're a disaster, Alara said. Completely. He almost smiled. But we made it through lunch. That's something. They stayed on the terrace while the party continued inside. After a while, other guests drifted out, asking polite questions that Alara and Colt fielded together. It got easier each time, finishing each other's sentences, adding details to their fictional history, making it real through repetition. By the time they left, Alara's head was pounding. You did well, Colt said in the carriage. I lied to 20 people. You convinced 20 people. Different thing. Is it? She looked at him. Do you ever feel guilty about any of this? He was quiet for a long time. Every day. But guilt doesn't change facts. We're here. This is happening. All we can do is see it through. Back at the ranch, Alara retreated to her room. She needed space, needed to think, needed to remember who she was before all of this. But when she looked in the mirror, the woman staring back was already someone different. Someone who wore expensive dresses and ate lunch with governors. Someone who lied with a straight face and stood up to powerful men. Someone named Alara Vance. The days that followed blurred together. Breakfast with Colt, where they practiced looking comfortable together. Afternoon calls from neighboring ranches, where Alara smiled until her face hurt. Dinners with business associates, where she learned to discuss cattle prices and railroad contracts like she'd been doing it for years. Margaret taught her how to manage the household staff, how to plan menus, how to host dinners that would make the society pages. Colt taught her about the ranch, which pastures held which herds, which hands had worked there longest, which parts of the operation made money, and which were bleeding them dry. At night, they sat in the study and went over the next day's schedule, who they'd see, what questions might come up, how to keep their stories straight. The Hendersons are coming for dinner tomorrow, Colt said one evening. They're old family friends. They'll want details. What kind of details? Personal ones. How we spend our evenings, whether we're planning children. He said it casually, but Alara saw tension in his shoulders. What do I say about children? Say we're waiting, letting the dust settle. It's reasonable. He made a note on his calendar, and if they push, I'll change the subject. You're good at that. At what? Controlling conversations, steering them where you want them to go. Colt set down his pen. It's a survival skill. When you grow up with a father like mine, you learn to manage situations before they manage you. It was the first time he'd mentioned his father beyond the basics. Alara waited, hoping he'd say more. He used to test me, Colt continued, put me in impossible situations just to see how I'd handle them. If I succeeded, he'd move the goalposts. If I failed, he'd make sure I knew exactly how disappointed he was. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I spent my whole childhood trying to earn approval that never came. Is that why you agreed to marry Josephine? Because it was what he would have done? Maybe. Or maybe I'm just tired of fighting battles I can't win. He looked at her. What about you? Why'd you really come to Wyoming? I told you, my family needed money. That's the what. I'm asking why you. Why not your brother? Alara hesitated. She'd gotten used to lying about some things, but this felt different, more personal. My mother died 2 years ago, she said finally. Before she passed, she made me promise to take care of them. My brother, my father. She said they needed someone strong, someone who wouldn't break. She smiled bitterly. Turns out I'm very good at not breaking, even when I should. That's not strength, that's just fear of falling apart. The words cut deep because they were true. We're quite the pair, Alara said. The man who can't earn approval and the woman who can't stop trying. At least we're consistent. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting everything gold. Can I ask you something? Alara said. Sure. That morning, when you claimed me as your wife, did you have any idea what you were doing? Colt was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, no. I just knew I couldn't marry Josephine. And when you fell through that ceiling like some kind of sign from the universe, I grabbed the opportunity. He met her eyes. I'm sorry for pulling you into this, for making you lie, for all of it. I'm not. The words surprised her as much as him. I should be, but I'm not. Is that terrible? It's honest. He stood, moved to the window. We should probably discuss sleeping arrangements. Alara's stomach dropped. What? People will expect us to share a room. Margaret's already mentioned it. The staff is starting to notice we're in separate quarters. Oh. There's a suite upstairs, master bedroom. It's got a sitting room attached. I can sleep there, you take the bedroom. But we need to make it look like we're together. Right, of course. Alara tried to ignore the heat in her face. That makes sense. We'll move you tomorrow. Tonight, just try to get some rest. But rest didn't come. Alara lay awake thinking about sharing space with Colt Vance, about the lies getting deeper and more complicated, about the fact that she'd been here 3 weeks and still felt like she was drowning. The Henderson dinner was excruciating. Mr. Henderson had known Colt since childhood and asked questions that required answers Alara didn't have. What did Colt eat for breakfast? How did he take his coffee? What was his morning routine, she guessed. Colt filled in gaps. They stumbled through it together, and somehow it worked. You two are still in the honeymoon phase, Mrs. Henderson said with a knowing smile. Everything's still new and exciting. Something like that, Colt said. After they left, Alara found him in the study, whiskey in hand. That was close, she said. Too close. We need to spend more time together. Actually together, not just performing for audiences. He poured her a glass without asking. Tomorrow, come ride the property with me. We'll talk. Get to know each other for real. I don't ride. Then I'll teach you. He handed her the whiskey. Think of it as research. The next morning, Colt met her at the stables with 2 horses, one massive bay for him, one smaller chestnut mare for her. This is Molly, he said, patting the mare's neck. She's patient, good for beginners. She's enormous. She's average, you're just small. He showed her how to mount, how to hold the reins, how to sit. His hands on her waist felt too familiar and not familiar enough. They rode out slowly, Colt keeping pace with Molly's plodding walk. The ranch spread out around them, miles of grassland, distant cattle, mountains that seemed to touch the sky. Tell me about Philadelphia, Colt said. What do you want to know? Anything. Everything. I need to know you better than I know my own schedule. So Alara told him. About the tiny apartment over a bakery. About working by candlelight until her eyes burned. About her father, who'd given up after her mother died. And her brother, who tried his best but couldn't hold things together. Colt listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. My father used to say that people were either builders or destroyers, he said finally. He saw himself as a builder, but really, he just destroyed slower. He looked at the mountains. I'm trying to be different. Build something that lasts without burning everything else down. But I'm starting to think it's impossible. Why? Because everything has a cost. This ranch, my reputation, this marriage. He glanced at her. You're paying a price too. Even if you got something out of the deal. I haven't gotten anything yet. No, but you will. I keep my promises. They rode in silence for a while. Then Colt showed her the east pasture, the place he'd mentioned at the Pritchard lunch, the place where they supposedly watched the sunrise together. We should actually do it sometime, he said. Watch the sun come up. Make the lie true. Why? Because then it's not a lie anymore. It's just something that happened. Alara didn't know what to say to that. Over the following weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Breakfast together. Colt working the ranch while Alara managed the house. Dinners with guests or quiet evenings in the study. Slowly, carefully, they built a life that looked real from the outside. And sometimes, when
This
Alara
story
wasn't
was
paying
posted on the
attention,
channel
it
The
felt real
Rusty
too.
Saddle. Please do
Like
not
the night Colt
repost
came
it in
home
any
exhausted
form.
from a cattle drive, and she had the cook make his favorite meal without being asked. Or the morning she found him reading in the library and sat beside him, not talking, just existing in the same space. Or the afternoon they worked together on ranch accounts, her organizational skills cutting through his chaos. You're good at this, he said, watching her reorganize his ledger system. At accounting? At being here. Making this place feel less like a museum and more like a home. It was the nicest thing he'd ever said to her. But there were hard moments too, like when mail arrived from Philadelphia and Alara had to hide in her room to cry. Or when Colt got news about Cartwright calling in loans early, trying to force his hand. Or when society women visited and asked pointed questions about when a baby might arrive. They think we're really married, Alara said one night. We are really married, on paper. You know what I mean. Colt set down his book. Does it bother you? That people assume? I don't know. Sometimes it feels like we're living in two different worlds. The one where everyone thinks we're happily married, and the one where we both know this ends in a year. What if it didn't have to? Alara's breath caught. What? Nothing. Forget I said anything. He stood abruptly. I'm going to check on the stock. I'll see you in the morning. He left before she could respond. Alara sat in the study alone, heart pounding, trying to understand what had just happened. Had Colt just suggested making this permanent? Or had she misread everything? She didn't sleep that night. And when morning came, Colt acted like the conversation never happened. But something had shifted. She felt it in the way he looked at her across the breakfast table, in the way his hand lingered when he helped her into the carriage, in the way he listened when she talked, like her words actually mattered. It scared her more than anything that had come before, because Alara Quinn had agreed to play a part. But somewhere along the way, without meaning to, without wanting to, she'd started to forget she was acting. And that was the most dangerous lie of all. 3 months into the arrangement, summer hit Wyoming like a furnace. The heat made everything worse. Tempers ran short, the cattle got restless, and the social season kicked into full gear with garden parties that lasted until sunset. Alara stood in front of her wardrobe, staring at dresses she still didn't feel qualified to wear. Tonight was the governor's ball, the biggest event of the season. Everyone would be watching. You look like you're deciding which firing squad to face. She turned to find Colt leaning in the doorway, already dressed in his formal attire. He looked unfairly good in black tie. I hate these things, she said. I know, but we need to go. He moved into the room, picked up the emerald green dress Margaret had insisted on. This one. It makes your eyes look dangerous. My eyes aren't dangerous. They were when you told off Cartwright. He handed her the dress. I'll wait downstairs. The ball was everything Alara had learned to dread. Too many people, too much scrutiny, too many conversations where one wrong word could unravel everything. But Colt stayed close, his hand always at her back, steering her through the crowd with practiced ease. You're getting better at this, he murmured during a break in conversation. At lying? At surviving. He grabbed 2 glasses of champagne from a passing tray. There's a difference. Before she could respond, a voice cut through the music. Vance, there you are. A man approached, mid-40s, expensive suit, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. And this must be the famous Mrs. Vance, Marcus Webb. I've been eager to meet you. Mr. Webb. Alara took his offered hand. Something about him made her skin crawl. I've known Colt since his father's days. Terrible business, what happened with the Cartwrights. Webb's smile widened. Though I suppose it worked out for you. Marcus. Colt's voice held a warning. What? I'm just saying she landed well. From seamstress to society wife in one convenient marriage. He leaned closer to Alara. Tell me, how does one make such a remarkable leap? Luck, Alara said flatly, and a talent for being in the wrong place at the right time. Webb laughed. I like her. She's got spine. He turned to Colt. We should talk business. My office, next week. I have a proposition that might interest you. I'll check my schedule. Do that. Webb tipped his hat to Alara. Pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Vance. He disappeared into the crowd. Colt's hand tightened on Alara's waist. Who is that? She asked. Trouble. Colt drained his champagne. Marcus Webb owns half the mining operations in Montana. He's been trying to expand into Wyoming for years, but my father always refused to work with him. Why? Because Webb doesn't build partnerships. He builds takeovers. Colt set down his glass. Come on. Let's dance before someone else corners us. Alara's stomach dropped. I don't know how to dance. Not like this. Then follow my lead. It's easier than it looks. He pulled her onto the floor before she could protest. The orchestra was playing something slow, and Colt's hand settled at her waist with a familiarity that should have felt wrong but didn't. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, he counted quietly. Don't think about it. Just move. Alara stumbled once, twice, then found the rhythm. Colt guided her through the steps with a patience she hadn't expected, adjusting when she faltered, never making her feel foolish. You're a good teacher, she said. My mother insisted I learn, said a man who couldn't dance was half civilized at best. His expression softened. She would have liked you. How do you know? Because she hated pretense, and you're the most honest liar I've ever met. Alara didn't know whether to laugh or be offended. That doesn't make sense. Sure it does. You lie about the facts, but not about who you are. There's a difference. He spun her gently. You never pretend to be something you're not. You just exist in circumstances that require creative storytelling. That's a generous interpretation. Maybe, but I'm right. They danced 2 more songs before Colt excused them, claiming Alara had a headache. In the carriage home, she leaned against the window, watching Wyoming roll past in the moonlight. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For not making tonight worse than it had to be. Colt was silent for a moment. You know, when I first proposed this arrangement, I thought it would be simple. A business transaction. Clean and straightforward. And now? Now I'm realizing nothing about this is simple. He looked at her. And I'm not sure I want it to be. Alara's breath caught. Before she could respond, the carriage lurched to a stop. They were home. The moment broke. Inside, Colt went to the study. Alara climbed the stairs to the master suite they now shared. Him in the sitting room, her in the bedroom, a door between them that stayed closed. Except tonight she couldn't sleep. The conversation in the carriage kept replaying in her head. What had Colt meant? What did she want him to mean? Around midnight she heard footsteps, then a soft knock on the connecting door. Alara? You awake? She opened the door. Colt stood there in shirt sleeves, hair disheveled, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen. Can't sleep either? She asked. No. He ran a hand through his hair. Listen, about what I said in the carriage. Forget it. You were tired. I wasn't tired. I was honest. He met her eyes. And that's the problem. What is? This was supposed to be temporary, an arrangement, but somewhere along the way I started... He stopped, shook his head. Never mind. It's late. We should both get some rest. He turned to go. Alara's hand shot out, caught his arm. Started what? Colt looked at her hand on his sleeve. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Started forgetting this isn't real. The words hung between them like smoke. Colt! Don't! Please! He gently removed her hand. We have a deal. 1 year. Then you're free. That's what you signed up for, and I can't. He stepped back. Good night, Alara. This time, she let him go. The next morning was brutal. They ate breakfast in silence, both pretending the night before hadn't happened. Colt left early to deal with ranch business. Alara threw herself into household management, approving menus and organizing linens and anything else that would keep her mind occupied. Margaret found her in the storage room around noon, counting tablecloths like her life depended on it. "What are you doing?"
This story was posted on the
Inventory.
channel The Rusty
"We did
Saddle.
inventory
Please
last
do not
week."
repost it
Margaret
in any
crossed her
form.
arms. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. You're a terrible liar when it comes to your own feelings. What happened?" Alara set down the tablecloth. "I think I'm making a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" "The kind where you forget what's real and what's pretend." Margaret's expression softened. "Oh, honey, you've fallen for him." "No, I haven't. I can't. This is temporary. Feelings don't care about contracts." Margaret sat on a storage chest. "Does he know?" "No, maybe. I don't know." Alara pressed her hands to her face. "He said something last night about forgetting this isn't real, but then he took it back, and now I don't know what to think." "What do you want to think?" "I want to think I'm smart enough not to fall in love with a man who's paying me to pretend to be his wife." Alara laughed bitterly. "But apparently I'm not that smart." "Love doesn't make you stupid, just vulnerable." Margaret stood. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" "Nothing. We have a deal. Deals can be renegotiated. Not this one." Margaret looked like she wanted to argue, but footsteps in the hallway interrupted them. A ranch hand appeared, looking frantic. "Mrs. Vance? There's been an accident. One of the men got thrown from his horse. Mr. Vance is asking for you." Alara's heart lurched. "Is he hurt?" "No, ma'am, but he thought you'd want to know about Davis." She followed the hand to the east pasture, where a group had gathered around a man on the ground. Colt knelt beside him, pressing a cloth to a bleeding wound on the man's leg. "Bones broken," Colt was saying. "We need to get him to town. Carefully." "I've got the wagon ready," another hand called. Colt looked up, saw Alara. "You didn't have to come." "I wanted to." She knelt beside him. "What can I do?" "Keep pressure here while I splint the leg." They worked together without speaking, Alara following Colt's instructions while he fashioned a splint from fence posts and torn fabric. The injured man, Davis, gritted his teeth through it all. "Sorry, boss," Davis managed. "Horse spooked at a snake." "Not your fault," Colt finished tying off the splint. "But you're done for the season. Doctor's orders." They loaded Davis into the wagon. Colt rode alongside it to town while Alara went back to the house. By the time he returned, it was nearly dark. She found him in the study, washing blood off his hands in the basin. "How is he?" she asked. "Stable, legs set. He'll recover, but it'll be months before he can ride again." Colt dried his hands. "We're short 3 men now. Can't afford to hire more." "What will you do?" "Work longer hours. Pick up the slack." He sounded exhausted. "Same as always." Alara moved closer. "You can't do everything yourself." "Watch me." "Colt, I'm fine, Alara. I've been doing this for years." "That doesn't mean you should keep doing it alone." He looked at her then, really looked, and something in his expression cracked. "I don't know how to do it any other way." "Then let me help." "You already do. More than you know. I mean really help, not just playing house and making appearances. Let me—" She stopped, unsure how to finish. "Let you what?" "Be here. Actually be here, not just pretending." The words came out wrong, too vulnerable, too honest. Colt stared at her. "Alara." A knock at the door cut him off. One of the house staff entered. "Mr. Vance, Mr. Webb is here to see you. Says it's urgent." Colt's jaw tightened. "Send him in." Marcus Webb entered like he owned the place. "Vance, Mrs. Vance, hope I'm not interrupting." "Actually," Alara started. "Just business talk," Webb said smoothly. "Won't take long." Colt looked at Alara. She nodded and left, but stayed close enough to hear voices through the door. "I'll be direct," Webb was saying. "I want to buy a stake in your operation, 20%. I'll pay above market value." "Not interested." "Hear me out. You're bleeding money. Everyone knows it. Cartwright's calling in loans, you're short on hands, and drought's coming. You need capital. I'll find it elsewhere." "Where?" Banks won't touch you after the Cartwright situation. Your reputation took a hit, whether you want to admit it or not. Webb's voice dropped. I'm offering you a lifeline. Take it. And if I don't, then I'll wait. Watch you struggle. And when you're desperate enough, I'll buy the whole thing for half what it's worth. A pause. Your choice, Vance. Partner or corpse? Alara heard movement, then Colt's voice, cold as winter. Get out of my house. Think about it. You've got 1 week. Footsteps. The front door closing, then silence. Alara waited a moment before entering the study. Colt stood at the window, hands braced against the frame. You heard, he said. Yes. Then you know how bad it is. I know Webb is trying to corner you. That's different. Is it? Colt turned. He's right about everything. The loans, the shortage, the drought. I'm drowning, Alara, and I'm taking you down with me. I'm already down here. Might as well drown together. He laughed, sharp and bitter. This isn't funny. I know, but giving up isn't the answer either. I'm not giving up. I'm being realistic. He moved to his desk, pulled out papers. Look at these. Debt, debt, more debt. I'm barely keeping the ranch running, and now Webb wants to swoop in and pick the bones. So don't let him. It's not that simple. Why not? Alara's voice rose to match his. Why does it have to be complicated? Tell him no. Find another way. There is no other way. Then we'll make one. The words echoed in the study. They stared at each other, breathing hard. We, Colt said quietly. You said we. Alara's face heated. I just meant, no, you said we. He moved closer. Like this is your problem too. It is my problem. I'm your wife, remember? At least on paper. On paper? His voice was strange. Right. Colt, what if it wasn't just on paper? Alara's breath stopped. What? What if we made this real, actually real, not just for show? He ran a hand through his hair. I know that's not the deal. I know you signed up for 1 year in freedom, but what if... Stop. Alara stepped back. Don't do this. Why not? Because you're desperate and exhausted, and Webb just threatened everything you've built. This isn't the time to make decisions about us. When is the right time? When everything's perfect. That'll never happen. I know, but it shouldn't happen like this either. Her voice cracked. Don't ask me to be real when you can't even admit what's happening here. I'm trying to admit it. No, you're trying to solve a problem. I'm not a solution to your financial crisis, Colt. I'm a person. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, it feels like you're looking for another arrangement, another deal to make everything easier. Tears burned her eyes. And I can't be that for you. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Colt opened his mouth, closed it. I don't know. The admission hurt worse than anything else he could have said. I need air. Alara moved toward the door. Alara, wait. No, I can't. I need to think. She fled before he could stop her. Outside, the night air was cool against her burning face. She walked without direction, ending up at the stables where Molly nickered softly in greeting. Hey, girl. Alara stroked the mare's nose. At least you're simple. Eat, sleep, run. No complicated feelings. She gets complicated when there's a stallion around. Alara spun. Margaret stood in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl. I saw you from the window, Margaret explained. Figured you could use company. I'm fine. You're crying in a stable. That's the opposite of fine. Margaret moved closer. What happened? Colt asked. He wanted... Alara couldn't finish. To make it real. How did you know? Because I've seen the way he looks at you, and the way you look at him when you think nobody's watching. Margaret leaned against Molly's stall. So what did you say? I said no. Why? Because he doesn't really want me. He wants a solution to his problems, and I can't... Her voice broke. I can't be someone's convenient answer anymore. Margaret was quiet for a moment. My husband died 15 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. You know what I regret most? All the times I said later instead of now. All the conversations we didn't have because I thought we had time. She looked at Alara. I'm not saying Colt's handling this well. He's a mess. But at least he's trying. Trying to use me? Or trying to tell you he's fallen in love and doesn't know how? Margaret touched Alara's shoulder. Question is, do you love him back?
This story was posted
Alara
on the
closed her
channel
eyes.
The Rusty Saddle.
I don't want
Please
to.
do not repost it in any
It's not
form.
an answer. It's the only answer I have. She stayed in the stable until Margaret left, then a while longer. When she finally went back inside, the house was dark. Colt's study door was closed. Alara climbed to the master suite, lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listened to Colt moving around in the sitting room, then silence. Around 3 in the morning, she heard it, a soft sound through the connecting door, almost like someone crying, though she knew Colt Vance would never admit to such weakness. Her hand went to the doorknob, stopped, pulled back. Some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed again, and Alara didn't know if she was brave enough to risk it. The week passed in careful distance. They were polite at meals, professional during social obligations, and at night they stayed on opposite sides of a door that felt thicker than wood. Webb's deadline approached. Colt worked 16-hour days trying to find solutions that didn't exist. Alara managed the house and tried not to watch him destroy himself. The night before Webb's deadline, there was a summer storm. Lightning cracked across the sky. Rain hammered the roof. And around midnight, someone pounded on the front door. Alara reached it first. A ranch hand stood there, soaked through. Fire, he gasped. The east barn, lightning strike. Colt appeared, already pulling on boots. How bad? Bad, spreading fast. They ran, through rain and mud, toward an orange glow that lit the sky like a second sun. The barn was fully engulfed, flames eating through timber like paper. The horses, someone yelled. Colt was already moving, disappearing into smoke. Alara's heart stopped. Mrs. Vance, you need to stay back. A hand grabbed her arm. Let me go. But before she could follow, Colt emerged leading a panicked horse, then another. The hands were pulling out equipment, salvaging what they could. Everyone out, Colt shouted. It's gone. Let it burn. They stepped back, watching months of work and thousands of dollars in supplies turn to ash. The rain couldn't touch flames that hot. Alara found Colt at the edge of the firelight. Soot streaked his face. His hands were shaking. How much? She asked quietly. Half my feed supply, 3 wagons, tools I can't replace. His voice was hollow. That's it. We're done. We're not done. Alara, we're not. She grabbed his arm, made him look at her. This is bad. But it's not over. You don't understand. Without that feed, I can't keep the cattle through winter. Without the equipment, I can't harvest what's left. Webb was right. I'm finished. Then we sell something, find investors, cut costs somewhere else. I've cut everything I can cut. His voice cracked. There's nothing left. There's this. She gestured at the land around them. There's you. There's people who believe in what you're building. Who? Name one person who'd invest in a sinking ship. Me. Colt stared at her. What? I'm invested, maybe not with money, but with everything else. Rain plastered her hair to her skull. You think I stayed here just for a paycheck? I could have run months ago, but I didn't, because somewhere along the way, this became my fight too. Alara, I love you, you idiot. The words tore out of her. I didn't want to. I tried not to. But I do. And I'm not going to stand here and watch you give up because you're too proud to admit you need help. Lightning cracked overhead. Colt's face was unreadable in the firelight. You love me, he said. Yes. Even though this is a disaster, even though I'm broke and desperate and probably going to lose everything. Yes. Why? Because you dance with me even when I step on your feet. Because you teach me to ride and don't make me feel stupid. Because you work yourself to death trying to protect everyone around you, even when they don't deserve it. Her voice shook. Because you're a good man in a bad situation, and I'm tired of pretending I don't see that. Colt closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were bright with something that might have been tears. "I love you too," he said. "I have for months. Maybe since the day you told off Cartwright. Definitely since the night I realized I didn't want this to end." "Then why didn't you say something?" "Because I was scared. Of losing you, of trapping you, of turning into my father, who saw people as assets instead of—" He stopped. "I didn't want to use you." "You're not using me. You're letting me choose." Elara moved closer. "And I choose this. Whatever this becomes. Even if it all falls apart. Especially then." He kissed her. It was desperate and wet from rain and tasted like smoke, and it was the most honest thing that had happened between them since the day they met. When they pulled apart, the barn was still burning. The crisis wasn't solved. Nothing had changed except everything. "We're still in trouble," Colt said. "I know. Webb's going to come for us." "Let him try." "You're insane." "Probably," Elara smiled, "but I'm insane with you." He laughed then, actually laughed, and pulled her close. They stood in the rain watching everything burn, but for the first time in months, Elara wasn't afraid. Because love wasn't a contract or an arrangement or a deal forged in desperation. It was choosing someone when things got hard, when fires burned and money ran out and the world seemed determined to break you. It was standing in the wreckage and saying, "I'm still here, and so are you, and that's enough." They stayed until the flames died to embers, then walked back to the house, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. Together. Morning came too fast and brought Marcus Webb with it. He arrived at 9 sharp, stepping out of his carriage like he already owned the place. Elara watched from the window as Colt met him on the front steps, still in yesterday's clothes, smelling like smoke. "Rough night?" Webb surveyed the damage visible from the drive. "I heard about the fire. Shame. That was your last reserve feed, wasn't it?" "What do you want, Marcus?" "Same thing I wanted last week. Partnership. Though I suppose my terms have improved from your perspective." Webb smiled. 50% now. And I'll cover the fire losses." "No." "You haven't heard my full offer." "Don't need to." Colt's voice was flat. "The answer's no." Webb's smile faded. "You're making a mistake." "Probably, but it's my mistake to make." "Is it? What about all those people depending on you? The hands who'll lose jobs when you go under, the families counting on your operation?" Webb glanced toward the window where Elara stood. "What about your wife? Does she get a say in you throwing away her future?" Elara pushed open the front door. "She does. And she says no, too." Both men turned to look at her. Webb's expression shifted to something calculating. "Mrs. Vance, how unfortunate that you're tied to a sinking ship." "I chose this ship," Elara said, "and I'm staying on it." "Even when it goes down?" "Especially then." Webb studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then he laughed. "You two deserve each other. Stubborn, proud, completely impractical." He turned back to Colt. "Fine. Refuse my help, but when you're begging on street corners, remember I offered you a way out." He climbed into his carriage and left without looking back. Colt stood in the drive until the dust settled. Then he turned to Elara. "That was stupid." "Probably. We don't have a plan. We don't have resources. We just told off our only potential investor." "I know. So why do I feel better than I have in months?" Elara took his hand. "Because we're making our own choices. Finally." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "We're going to fail spectacularly." "Maybe. But at least we'll fail together." They went inside to face the wreckage of their finances. The numbers were worse than Elara had feared. Between the fire losses, the loan payments, and normal operating costs, they had maybe 3 months before everything collapsed. "We need to cut deeper," Colt said, going through ledgers. "Let go more hands. Sell off sections of land we're not using." "That's not cutting. That's bleeding out slowly." Elara pulled over a different set of books. "What if we went the other direction?" "What do you mean?" "Instead of making ourselves smaller, what if we expanded? Found new revenue streams?" Colt looked at her like she'd suggested they learn to fly. "With what money?" "I don't know yet, but look." She spread out the papers. You've got land, cattle, resources. What you don't have is diversification. Everything depends on the cattle market. What if we change that? How? Elara thought about the women she'd met over the past months, the conversations at tea parties and garden socials. Horses. Half the ladies in this territory want good riding horses for their daughters. You've got the pasture land and the knowledge. What if we started breeding? That takes years to turn a profit. So we find something faster, too.
This story
What about
was
that
posted
south
on the
section
channel
near
The
the
Rusty
river?
Saddle.
Could you grow
Please do
anything
not
there?
repost it in any form.
Hey, maybe. Some vegetables. Colt was starting to look interested despite himself. My mother used to talk about having a kitchen garden, said fresh produce could fetch good prices in town. So do both. Start small, prove the concept, use the profits to expand. Elara was thinking out loud now. And the house, we've got all these empty rooms. What if we took in boarders during cattle drive season? Fed them, sheltered them, charged for the service. Turn the ranch into a boarding house? Turn it into a profitable enterprise instead of a money pit. Colt stared at the papers. At her. This is crazy. So is claiming a stranger as your wife. But here we are. He laughed then, the sound surprised out of him. You're serious about this? Completely. We've spent months pretending to be something we're not. Maybe it's time to actually build something real. It'll take everything we have, time, energy, whatever money's left. I know. And it might not work. It might not. Elara met his eyes. But doing nothing definitely won't work. So what have we got to lose? Colt was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled her into his lap, kissed her hard enough to make her forget they were drowning in debt. Okay, he said when they came up for air. Let's try it your way. They spent the next week planning. Colt surveyed the south section and came back with soil samples. Elara met with the cook to discuss what vegetables would grow and what prices they could fetch. Margaret helped spread word about boarding services, making it sound exclusive rather than desperate. The first interested party showed up on a Thursday. A cattle buyer from Denver who needed a place to stay for a week while he negotiated deals. He paid in advance, ate like he'd never seen food before, and told 3 other buyers about the excellent accommodations. Within a month, they had a waiting list. I can't believe this is working, Colt said one evening, counting receipts. Don't sound so surprised. It was my idea. That's why I'm surprised. He dodged the pillow she threw at him. I'm kidding, mostly. The vegetable operation started slower. They lost half the first planting to an early frost, but Elara had studied her mother's old gardening notes, and the second attempt took better. By August, they were selling fresh produce to 3 restaurants in town and 2 households that wanted regular deliveries. The horse breeding would take longer, but Colt had identified 2 promising mares and found a stallion owner willing to negotiate stud fees. It was a start, but the loans were still due, and Cartwright wasn't interested in extensions. He wants me to fail, Colt said, reading the latest letter. He's calling everything in, even the small notes. Can he do that? Legally, probably not. But he's got lawyers, and I don't. He can make this fight expensive enough that I can't afford to win it. Colt threw the letter on his desk. We need more time. Or more money. Same problem. Elara thought about the women she'd met, the conversations about investments and business. What about investors? Real ones, not vultures like Webb. Who'd invest in a failing ranch? Someone who believes in what we're building. She started pacing. Think about it. We've got proof of concept now. The boarding house works. The garden's turning profit. We're not a losing bet anymore. We're not a winning one either. But we could be, with the right backing. An idea was forming. What if we pitched it, like a business proposal, showed the numbers, demonstrated the potential? To who? Everyone. Anyone who'll listen. Elara was getting excited now. There's that Cattlemen's Association meeting next month. All the big ranchers attend. What if we presented there? Colt looked skeptical. They don't let people pitch investments at those meetings. They don't let wives attend at all, but I'm going anyway. Elara, we need capital, Colt. And sitting here waiting for Cartwright to destroy us isn't a strategy. It's surrender. She moved to his desk, planted her hands on it. Let me help, really help, not just manage the house and smile at parties. Let me fight. He stared at her. You know they'll tear you apart in there. Those men don't respect women in business. Then they'll learn to. She held his gaze. I didn't survive Philadelphia winters to be scared of Wyoming ranchers. Say yes. This could go very badly. Or it could save us. Colt stood, cupped her face in his hands. When did you get so fierce? I've always been fierce. You just gave me something worth fighting for. He kissed her, slow and deep. Okay, we'll do it. Together. The next month was chaos. They refined their pitch, created documentation, practiced presentations until Alara could recite numbers in her sleep. Margaret helped her find the right dress, professional but not apologetic, expensive enough to command respect. The night before the meeting, Alara couldn't sleep. She found Colt in the study, going over papers for the 100th time. You're going to wear holes in those pages, she said. I want to be ready. We're ready. We've been ready for weeks. She took the papers from him, set them aside. Come to bed. I can't. If we mess this up, we won't mess it up. And if we do, we'll survive it, same as we've survived everything else. She pulled him to his feet. Please, just for tonight, stop fighting and sleep. He let her lead him upstairs. In the master bedroom, their bedroom now, the pretense finally dropped. They lay in the dark, listening to Wyoming wind rattle the windows. Are you scared? Alara asked. Terrified. Me too. Good. Means we're paying attention. He found her hand, laced their fingers together. Thank you. For what? For staying, for fighting, for being stubborn enough not to give up when any sane person would have run. His voice was soft in the darkness. For loving me when I didn't deserve it. You deserve it. She rolled to face him. You've always deserved it. You just didn't believe it. I'm starting to. They made love slowly, carefully, like they were learning each other all over again. Afterward, Alara lay with her head on Colt's chest, listening to his heartbeat steady into sleep. She didn't sleep. Just lay there memorizing this moment. Because tomorrow, everything would change, one way or another. The Cattlemen's Association met in a grand hall in town. Alara had never seen so many expensive suits and calculating eyes in one place. The air smelled like cigar smoke and money. You sure about this? Colt asked as they entered. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Heads turned as they walked in. Alara held her chin high, her hand steady on Colt's arm. Let them stare. Let them judge. She'd earned her place here. Thomas Cartwright stood near the front of the room. When he saw them, his expression went cold. Vance, I didn't expect to see you here. I'm a cattleman. This is a cattlemen's association. Where else would I be? Colt's voice was level. I meant her. Cartwright's gaze swept over Alara. This is a private meeting. Wives aren't permitted. My wife is my business partner. She goes where I go. That's not how we do things. Then maybe it's time we changed how we do things. Colt moved past him before Cartwright could argue. They found seats near the back. The meeting started with usual business, market reports, legislation updates, grazing rights discussions. Alara's palms sweated. Their presentation was scheduled for the end. Finally, the president called them forward. Colt Vance has requested time to address the association. 5 minutes. Thank you. Colt stood, helped Alara up. Together they walked to the front. The room was silent, skeptical. Alara could feel the doubt rolling off them in waves. Gentlemen, Colt began, most of you know me. Know my father built Vance Ranch from nothing. Some of you know I've had trouble keeping it running since he passed. He paused. What you might not know is that we've found a solution, and we're looking for partners to help us scale it. He nodded to Alara. She stepped forward, heart pounding so hard she could barely hear her own voice. Traditional cattle ranching is unpredictable, she said. Market fluctuations, weather, disease, too many variables you can't control. What we're proposing is diversification. Multiple revenue streams that support each other and create stability. She pulled out their documentation, passed it around. In 3 months, our boarding operation has generated $1,200. Our vegetable sales have brought in another $800. Both are growing. And we're just getting started. With all due respect, Mrs. Vance, someone called out, that's pocket change compared to cattle profits. You're right. In a good year. Alara met his eyes. But this year isn't good, is it? Half of you are operating at a loss. The other half are breaking, even if you're lucky. What we're offering is insurance, stable income that doesn't depend on market prices or Kansas City buyers. Murmurs rippled through the room, some interested, most skeptical. Cartwright stood. This is absurd. You want us to invest in vegetable gardens and boarding houses? That's not ranching. That's desperation. It's adaptation, Colt said. And it's working.
This story was posted
For
on
now.
the channel The
What
Rusty
happens
Saddle.
when the novelty
Please
wears
do not
off? When
repost it
people
in any
realize they're
form.
paying premium prices for glorified produce and shared rooms, Cartwright's voice carried across the hall. You're not innovating, you're flailing, and you want to drag us down with you. We're asking for partnership, Alara said, not charity. Anyone who invests gets returns tied to profit. We succeed, you succeed. It's simple. Nothing about this is simple. Cartwright turned to address the room. Colt Vance is broke. Everyone knows it. He married a seamstress to avoid a legitimate business arrangement, burned half his resources in a fire, and now he's begging for handouts disguised as investment opportunities. His smile was sharp. Don't let sentiment cloud judgment. This is a bad bet. The room shifted. Alara could feel momentum turning against them. Then a voice from the back. I'll invest. Everyone turned. An older man stood, weathered face, calloused hands, the look of someone who'd built something from nothing and respected others who tried. James Hendricks, he said, I'll put in 2,000, not because I think vegetables are the future, but because these two have more guts than the rest of us combined. Another voice. Frank Morrison, I'm in for 1,000. Sarah Chen, 1,500. More voices. Not everyone, not even half, but enough. Enough to matter. Cartwright's face went red. You're all fools. Maybe, Hendricks said, but at least we're trying something, better than sitting around waiting for the market to improve. The meeting dissolved into chaos, arguments, negotiations, handshakes. Alara stood in the center of it, barely breathing, while Colt fielded questions and promises. When it was over, they'd secured $8,000 in investment capital, not enough to solve everything, but enough to survive. Outside, Colt pulled Alara into an alley between buildings and kissed her until she forgot her own name. We did it, he said against her mouth, but you did it. That speech was yours. Your idea, your strategy. He pulled back to look at her. I couldn't have done this without you. You would have found a way. No. I would have given up, or taken Webb's deal, or let Cartwright win. His hands framed her face. You made me believe we could fight. That's worth more than any investment. They went home and celebrated with the staff, champagne Margaret had been saving, food the cook prepared special, everyone laughing and planning and feeling like maybe, just maybe, things would work out. Late that night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Alara and Colt sat on the porch watching stars. What happens now? She asked. Now we work. Use that money to expand operations, hire back some hands, rebuild what the fire took. He pulled her closer. And we keep fighting. For how long? As long as it takes. Alara thought about the contract they'd signed, about the 1-year deadline that had passed 2 weeks ago without either of them mentioning it, about the divorce that was supposed to happen, but hadn't. Colt? We never dissolved the marriage. The arrangement. It's been over a month past our agreement. He was quiet for a moment. I know. So what are we? I don't know. What do you want to be? Alara turned to look at him. Married. Actually married. No contract, no arrangement, just us. Even though I'm difficult and stubborn and terrible at sharing my feelings. Even though, maybe because of it. And if everything still falls apart, if the investments don't work and we lose the ranch anyway, then we lose it together and we start over, together. She took his hand. I'm not going anywhere, Colt. You're stuck with me. He kissed her, soft and slow. Good. Because I love you, really love you. Not because you're convenient or useful or solving my problems, just because you're you. Took you long enough to figure it out. I'm a slow learner. They sat there until dawn started painting the sky pink. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. A rooster crowed. The ranch was waking up to another day of work and struggle and small victories. But for the first time since Alara had fallen through a ceiling into the wrong party, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. The weeks that followed weren't easy. Cartwright fought them at every turn, spreading rumors, pressuring their investors, making business difficult whenever possible. Webb circled like a vulture, waiting for them to fail. But they didn't fail. The boarding house stayed full. The garden expanded to include a small orchard. The horse breeding program showed promise. Slowly, painfully, they started turning a profit. Not enough to be comfortable, but enough to survive. One evening, a letter arrived from Philadelphia. Alara's brother had written, thanking her for the money she'd sent. The debts were paid. Their father had found work. Things were stable. "You did it," Colt said, reading over her shoulder. "You saved them." "We did it. That was our deal, remember?" "The deal's over, Alara. Has been for weeks." "I know, but we're not." She turned to face him. "Are we?" "Not even close." He pulled her into his lap. "You know what I realized today?" "What?" "I don't remember what my life was like before you crashed into it, and I don't want to." "That's the fire damage talking. You lost all your memories in the smoke." He laughed, the sound warm against her hair. "Maybe, but I meant it. You changed everything." "You changed too." "For the better?" "For the real." She kissed him. "That's better than better." They sat like that for a while, watching the sun set over land they'd fought to keep. Land that finally felt like home. Because home wasn't a place, or a contract, or an arrangement. It was choosing someone every day. When things were good and when they were terrible. When the money ran out and the fires burned and powerful men tried to tear you down. It was standing together and saying, this is worth fighting for, and they'd keep fighting, for as long as it took, together. Winter came hard that year. Snow buried the roads for weeks at a time, and the temperature dropped so low that water froze in the pipes. But inside the ranch house, life had found a different rhythm. Alara stood at the kitchen window watching Colt work with the horses in the corral. Even in the cold, he moved with a confidence she hadn't seen 6 months ago, like he'd remembered who he was supposed to be instead of who his father wanted him to become. "He's happier," Margaret said, coming to stand beside her. "Both of you are. We're broke, overworked, and fighting off creditors every other week, but yeah, happier." Alara smiled. "Doesn't make sense, does it?" "Makes perfect sense. You're building something that's yours, not inherited, not arranged, yours." Margaret handed her a cup of coffee. "That's worth more than money. Tell that to Cartwright." "Cartwright's a miserable old man who measures everything in dollars and comes up empty every time." Margaret sipped her coffee. "Speaking of which, he's been quiet lately. That worries me more than when he was actively fighting you." She was right. For the past month, Cartwright had stopped pressuring investors, stopped spreading rumors, stopped everything. It felt like waiting for a storm you could smell but couldn't see. The storm broke on a Tuesday. Colt came into the house carrying a legal document, his face carved from stone. "We need to talk." Alara's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "Cartwright's calling in everything, not just the loans. He's demanding immediate payment on contracts my father signed years ago. Things I didn't even know existed." He threw the papers on the table. "It's a coordinated attack. Him and 3 other creditors, all demanding payment within 30 days. "How much?" $23,000. The number hit like a physical blow. They had maybe $4,000 in the bank. Even with the investments, they'd never raised that kind of money in a month. "He's trying to force bankruptcy," Alara said. "He's succeeding." Colt sat heavily. "Even if we sold everything, the horses, the equipment, sections of land, we couldn't raise that much fast enough, and selling would destroy the business we've built. So what do we do?" "I don't know." He looked at her, and for the first time since the fire, she saw defeat in his eyes. Maybe Webb was right. Maybe I should have taken his deal when I had the chance. "You don't mean that." "Don't I? At least then you'd be secure. The hands would keep their jobs. The ranch would survive, even if I didn't own it anymore." "Colt." "I'm tired, Alara. I'm tired of fighting battles I can't win. Tired of watching everything my father built slip away because I'm not strong enough to hold it." His voice cracked. Maybe it's time to admit defeat. Alara moved to kneel in front of him, took his hands in hers. Listen to me. You are not your father. You don't have to carry his legacy if it's breaking you. And if we lose this ranch, we'll survive. We'll find another way. There is no other way. There's always another way. We just have to be brave enough to take it. She squeezed his hands. But we don't give up. Not yet. Not while we're still standing. He pulled her up into his lap, buried his face in her neck. How do you stay so strong? I'm not strong. I'm just too stubborn to quit. She held him tighter. And I have you. That makes the impossible feel possible. They sat like that until the sun set. Then Colt straightened, wiped his face, and became the man who'd faced down Cartwright and Webb and every other threat that came their way. Okay, he said. We fight, but we do it smart. Over the next week, they worked every angle they could think of. Colt met with lawyers looking for loopholes in the contracts. Alara approached their investors, explaining the situation and asking for extensions. Margaret spread word through her network, trying to find allies. But Cartwright had planned well. The contracts were solid. The investors were sympathetic but tapped out.
This story was posted on
everyone
the
else was
channel
too
The Rusty
scared of
Saddle.
Cartwright's
Please
reach
do
to
not
help.
repost it in any
5
form.
days before the deadline, Alara was in the study going over numbers for the 100th time when she heard horses. Not the usual ranch traffic, multiple riders, moving fast. She went to the window and felt her blood go cold. Marcus Webb rode at the head of a group of men. Behind him, Thomas Cartwright. And behind them, a dozen riders carrying surveying equipment. Colt appeared beside her. Stay inside. Like hell. They met the group in the front yard. Webb dismounted with the easy confidence of a man who knew he'd already won. Vance, Mrs. Vance, hope we're not interrupting. What do you want, Marcus? Colt's voice was level, but Alara could see tension in his shoulders. Just doing some preliminary surveying. Cartwright's going to own this place in a few days. Figured I'd get a head start on dividing it up. Webb smiled. Don't worry, I'll make sure you get a fair price when I buy my sections. You've got no right to be here. Actually, I do. Cartwright signed a provisional deed transfer this morning, pending your default, which we all know is coming. Webb gestured to his men. Start with the south section. That's the prime farmland. Get off my property. Colt's hand went to his belt, where Alara knew he kept a gun. Now. Or what? You'll shoot us? In front of witnesses? Webb's smile widened. That's not your style, Vance. You play by the rules, even when the rules are rigged against you. Cartwright rode forward. This is business, Colt. Nothing personal. You had your chance to do this the easy way. You chose pride over practicality. I chose principle over profit. There's a difference. Not one that matters when you're signing bankruptcy papers. Cartwright looked at Alara. You should start packing, Mrs. Vance, unless you plan to go back to sewing once your husband loses everything. The words were designed to cut. They did. But Alara had spent months learning to stand in front of powerful men without flinching. I'll pack when the judge signs the order, she said. Until then, this is still our home, and you're trespassing. Brave words from a woman married to a failure. He's not a failure. Alara moved to stand beside Colt. He's a man fighting against a system designed to crush people like him. There's honor in that. What's your excuse? Cartwright's face went red. You little... That's enough. A new voice cut through the tension. Everyone turned. A rider approached from the main road, a woman on a gray horse, moving with the kind of authority that made even Webb straighten. She dismounted, pulled off her riding gloves, and surveyed the group with cool eyes. Gentlemen, I heard there was excitement out here. Thought I should see for myself. Governor Marsh's wife, Margaret whispered, appearing at Alara's elbow. What's she doing here? Mrs. Marsh walked straight to Colt. Mr. Vance, I believe we met at your wedding celebration. Quite the memorable evening. Ma'am, Colt nodded. What brings you to the ranch? Business. I've been reviewing investment opportunities in the territory. Your operation came highly recommended. She glanced at Webb and Cartwright, though it seems I'm arriving at an inopportune time. Just a minor dispute, Webb said smoothly. Nothing that concerns you. On the contrary, I'm very concerned when men attempt to steal land through legal manipulation. Mrs. Marsh's voice stayed pleasant, but steel ran through it. That's what this is, isn't it? A coordinated effort to force bankruptcy and acquire valuable property below market value. That's a serious accusation, Cartwright said. It's an accurate observation. She pulled a document from her saddlebag. I've reviewed the contracts you're using to justify this seizure. Interesting reading. Especially the section where your father, Mr. Cartwright, purchased these debts from their original holders at 30 cents on the dollar specifically to use as leverage against the Vance family. The yard went silent. That's speculation, Cartwright said, but his voice had lost its confidence. It's documentation. I have copies of the purchase agreements, dates, amounts, purposes. Mrs. Marsh smiled. My husband is the governor. I ensure he knows what business dealings happen in his territory, and this particular dealing smells like corruption. Webb shifted uncomfortably. Even if that's true, the debts are still valid. Are they? Because I also have documents showing that 3 of these contracts were signed by Colt's father while he was suffering from the illness that eventually killed him. Medical records confirm he was not of sound mind during those final months. She looked at Colt. You could contest every single one of these agreements. It would take years to resolve, during which time no seizure could proceed. Alara felt Colt's hand find hers, squeezed tight. Of course, Mrs. Marsh continued, litigation is expensive and uncertain, so I'd like to propose an alternative. She turned to Cartwright. I'll purchase these debts from you, full value, paid immediately. The Vances can then repay me on a schedule that actually allows their business to survive. Why would you do that? Cartwright demanded. Because I believe in what they're building. Diversified ranching, community investment, sustainable growth, that's the future of this territory. Not corporate land grabs and financial manipulation. She looked at Webb. And because I don't appreciate men like you trying to steal what others have worked to build. Webb's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty of mistakes in my life. This isn't one of them. Mrs. Marsh handed the document to Colt. Read it over. If the terms are acceptable, we can finalize everything today. Colt scanned the pages, and Alara watched his expression shift from disbelief to hope. The repayment schedule was generous, 10 years, low interest, with flexibility for bad seasons. This is more than fair, he said quietly. Why? Because my husband and I have 3 daughters. I want them growing up in a territory where innovation is rewarded, where hard work matters, where people can build futures without being crushed by men who value power over progress. Mrs. Marsh's expression softened. And because I like your wife. Anyone brave enough to crash an engagement party and survive deserves support. Alara felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. Thank me by succeeding. Make this operation something my daughters can point to and say, that's what's possible when you refuse to quit. Colt signed the agreement with shaking hands. Mrs. Marsh signed as witness, then turned to Cartwright. I'll have the purchase payment delivered to your bank tomorrow. Consider our business concluded. Her smile was sharp. And Mr. Cartwright, if I hear of you attempting anything like this again, my husband will take a very close interest in all your business dealings. I trust that's clear. Cartwright looked like he'd swallowed glass. Perfectly. Excellent. Gentlemen, I believe you are leaving. Mrs. Marsh mounted her horse. Mr. and Mrs. Vance, I'll be in touch about the details. Enjoy your evening. She rode off, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. Webb was the first to recover. He turned to Colt, expression unreadable. You're a lucky man, Vance. Luck has nothing to do with it. No? Then what would you call it? Colt looked at Alara. Love? Community? People willing to fight for something that matters. He met Webb's eyes. Things you wouldn't understand. Webb stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed, the sound bitter. Maybe you're right. Maybe I wouldn't. He climbed on his horse. Congratulations. You won. Enjoy it while it lasts. He rode off with his men. Cartwright followed without another word, his shoulders hunched in defeat. When the last rider disappeared down the road, Colt turned to Alara. Did that really just happen? I think so, but I might be hallucinating from stress. He laughed, the sound breaking something loose in both of them. Then he was kissing her, lifting her off the ground, spinning her around, while the ranch hands cheered and Margaret cried happy tears. We're going to make it, Colt said against her mouth. We're actually going to make it. I told you, we just had to keep fighting. You told me a lot of things. I should listen to you more often. Yes, you should. They celebrated that night with everyone on the ranch. The cook prepared a feast. Someone brought out a fiddle. They danced in the yard under stars. And for the first time in months, the future felt like something to look forward to instead of dread. Late that night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Alara and Colt sat on the porch wrapped in blankets. I've been thinking, Colt said. Dangerous. He smiled. About the arrangement. Our original contract. Alara's heart stuttered. What about it? We should burn it. Officially, legally, completely erase it. Because I don't want to be married to you because of a deal we made when we were desperate. He turned to face her. I want to marry you for real. Choose you consciously, deliberately, with full knowledge of who you are and what we're building together. We're already married. Legally, yes, but that marriage was born from lies and desperation. I want something better, something real. He pulled a small box from his pocket. So I'm asking properly. Alara Quinn Vance, will you marry me? Again, but for the right reasons this time. Inside the box was a simple gold band, nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just a ring that said, I choose you. Alara's eyes burned. That's the worst proposal I've ever heard. We're already married, you idiot. Is that a yes? Of course it's a yes. She took the ring, slid it onto her finger. But we're doing this properly, with witnesses and vows that actually mean something. Deal. They married in the spring on the same land where everything had started. Not in the grand ballroom, that belonged to the lies, but outside in the south section where Alara's garden was starting to bloom. Margaret stood as witness. The ranch hands attended. Mrs. Marsh came with her daughters, who were fascinated by the whole story. Even some of the neighboring ranchers showed up, the ones who'd invested and stayed loyal. Josephine Cartwright sent a gift, a set of embroidered linens with a note that said simply, "For the marriage that should have been mine. Thank you for saving me from it." The ceremony was short. No fancy speeches, no political guests, just two people standing in front of friends, choosing each other with clear eyes and honest hearts. I love you, Colt said when it was his turn to speak. Not because you're convenient or useful or solving my problems, but because you're brave when I'm scared, strong when I'm weak, and honest when I want to hide. You make me better. Make this place better. Make everything better. Alara's voice shook when she responded. I love you because you taught me that falling doesn't mean failing, that asking for help isn't weakness, that building something real takes courage, but it's worth every terrifying moment. She took his hands. I choose you, today and every day after, in the good times and the hard times, when we're rich and when we're broke, when the storms come and when the sun shines, I choose you. They kissed as husband and wife, really, truly married this time, and everyone cheered. The celebration lasted until sunset. Dancing, food, laughter, the kind of joy that comes from surviving something that should have destroyed you. Late in the evening, Alara found herself at the edge of the gathering, watching the party from a distance. Margaret appeared beside her. Having second thoughts? The older woman asked. Just the opposite. I'm thinking about how far we've come. Alara smiled. A year ago, I was a seamstress on a stagecoach, heading toward what I thought would be a simple job. Now I'm here. Married for real, running a ranch, building a life I never imagined. Regret any of it? Not even the terrible parts, because they taught me something important. What's that? Alara thought about the girl who'd fallen through the ceiling, the woman who'd agreed to a fake marriage out of desperation, the person she'd become through fighting for something that mattered. That strength isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing to get back up when you do. It's about asking for help instead of drowning alone. It's about admitting you're scared and doing the hard thing anyway. She looked at Margaret. I spent my whole life trying to be strong enough to handle everything myself. Turns out, real strength is letting people in. Colt learned that too. We taught each other. Alara watched Colt across the yard, laughing with the ranch hands. He thought he had to be perfect like his father wanted. I thought I had to never need anyone. We were both wrong. And now? Now we're just two imperfect people building something together, making mistakes, fixing them, trying again. She smiled. It's messy and hard, and nothing like what I imagined. But it's real, and that's better than any fantasy. Margaret hugged her. You're going to be fine, both of you. We already are. The years that followed weren't easy. Droughts came. Markets fluctuated. They had setbacks and failures and moments when it felt like everything might still fall apart. But they faced it together. The ranch grew slowly, sustainably. The boarding house became known throughout the territory for excellent food and honest hospitality. The garden expanded to include a greenhouse. The horse breeding program produced its first successful foal, which sold for 3 times their investment. They paid back Mrs. Marsh ahead of schedule, hired more hands, built a small school on the property for workers' children, created something that looked less like the empire Colt's father had wanted and more like a community. 5 years after the wedding, Alara stood in the same spot where she'd crashed through the ceiling. The ballroom had been converted to a community hall now, open for gatherings and celebrations. The space where she'd once felt so out of place had become somewhere she belonged. Colt found her there, their daughter sleeping against his shoulder. They had 2 children now, a girl who had Alara's stubbornness and Colt's determination, and a boy who was currently drooling on his father's shirt. Remembering? Colt asked. Appreciating. There's a difference. Alara touched their daughter's hand, watched tiny fingers curl around hers. You know what I think about sometimes? What? What would have happened if I hadn't come to Wyoming? If Mrs. Hadley hadn't left? If I'd turned around and gone home when I realized the job was gone? We wouldn't be here. No. But more than that, I wouldn't be me. This version of me anyway. The one who knows how to fight, how to build, how to love someone without losing myself. She looked at him. You gave me that. You gave it to yourself. I just didn't get in the way. You did more than that. You chose me when you didn't have to, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, fought beside me when it would have been easier to walk away. She kissed him softly. Thank you. For what? For falling into my life when I fell into yours. For making the worst day of my life turn into the best thing that ever happened. She smiled. For teaching me that love isn't about perfect circumstances. It's about choosing each other when everything's falling apart. Their son woke up crying. Their daughter stirred and complained. The moment broke into chaos. Diapers, feeding, the mundane reality of life with small children. But later, after the kids were asleep and the house was quiet, Alara and Colt stood on the porch, watching stars. What are you thinking? She asked. That my father would hate what I've done with this place. It's smaller, less profitable, nothing like the empire he wanted to build. Colt pulled her close. And I don't care. Because it's ours. Built on our terms, with our values. That matters more than money or legacy or any of the things he thought defined success. What defines it for you? This. You. Knowing that when our kids grow up, they'll remember parents who loved each other, who fought for what they believed in, who failed sometimes but got back up. He kissed her forehead. That's success. Everything else is just noise. Alara thought about the girl who'd arrived in Wyoming with one carpet bag and desperate hope, about the choices that led her here, about the lies that became truth through persistence and love. She thought about falling, through ceilings, into love, apart and back together, about learning that strength wasn't about being unbreakable, but about breaking and healing and choosing to try again anyway. Because that was the real story, not the dramatic rescue or the perfect ending, but the daily choice to show up, to fight, to love someone even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. The only rule that mattered. Choose each other, every single day, no matter the storm. And they did. Through seasons of plenty and seasons of drought, through triumphs and disasters, through every ordinary moment that made up a life. They chose each other, built something real from lies, found truth in desperation, created a home from a house that once felt like a prison. Years later, people would ask Alara how she and Colt met. She'd smile and give them the polite version, letters, courtship, a quiet wedding. The story that made sense to people who hadn't lived it, but on quiet nights, when it was just the 2 of them, she'd tell the truth. I crashed through your ceiling at the worst possible moment, she'd say, and you claimed me as your wife to escape your own disaster. Best mistake I ever made, Colt would respond. Second best. The first was letting me stay. That wasn't a mistake. That was the smartest thing I ever did. They'd argue about it, laugh about it, retell the story to their children and grandchildren. And every time the lesson was the same. Love isn't found in perfect circumstances. It's built in imperfect ones. Through choosing someone when logic says you shouldn't, when fear says it's too risky, when every reasonable voice says walk away. Love is standing in the wreckage and saying, I'm staying, I'm fighting, I'm choosing you. And that choice, made daily, with open eyes and honest hearts, was worth more than any empire, any legacy, any perfectly planned life could ever be. Elara and Colt learned that the hard way, through lies and fires and financial ruin, through public humiliation and private doubt, through every terrible, beautiful, impossible moment that led them here, to a life they built together. Imperfect, chaotic, real. The only life worth living. The end.